Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gunnels, joining you from Houston, Texas, this March 10th, 2025 at wait, crap. All right. It appears that everything is set up. Let me make sure the time is, 1:44 p.m. Central Daylight Time. So I'm glad to see that my computer has updated automatically to daylight time. Isn't that just wonderful? In the meantime, welcome to Reading Epic Threads. I'm Patrick Gunnels, and here we are in freaking daylight savings time. I was very gratified to see the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., saying we should never have to change our clocks again. We should get rid of this. And then somebody said, screw that. We got to change our clocks back to standard time. We got to change one more time. And he, wrote back 100%. So he's okay. But we need permanent standard time, not permanent daylight time. I would rather keep the status quo than permanent daylight time. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. All right. So we're going to do a piece called The Act That Would Make Stolen Elections Never Happen Again. Before you do any of that, guys, go to tulipblooms.shop and get your hands on the Epic Moisture Creamy Body Butter. So I'm telling you right now, guys, the Epic Moisture Creamy Body Butter is going to stop shipping from Houston. I'm going to say in the middle of April. So get your hands on it right now. It will not be available after that for a very simple reason. The heat of summer makes the stuff melt, and I'm not adding cetyl alcohol to make it impervious to the weather. That defeats the whole purpose of this natural ingredient stuff. The Epic Moisture Creamy Body Butter has nothing else in it other than the stuff you want to put on your skin. That's kokum butter, jojoba oil. You got your babassu oil, which is kind of like coconut oil, but way better. Shea butter, mango butter, apricot kernel oil, argan oil, amaranth oil. Good luck finding that in any of the products that you buy at the store. It's amazing. All refined organic. Every single thing in here is amazing. And I'm making a ton of unscented. And I make this stuff myself, guys. So every single time you get one of these, you're getting something that was made by me personally. Get your hands on the Epic Moisture Creamy Body Butter. I'm making tons of unscented right now. Get it at tulipblooms.shop. Promo code Shapiro. That's right. Promo code Shapiro, my friends. And don't forget, add in the castor blend. It has sea buckthorn fruit oil. Add in the amazing rainfall. We have it in tons of essential oil ingredients. Add them on. Just make sure to use promo code Shapiro. Don't forget, follow me, pgunnels1 on Twitter. Follow me, pgunnels, right here on Rumble or Twitter, doing it on both. And then there's readingepicthreads.substack.com, which is where I am streaming live right now. Everywhere else, you're seeing it as a replay. All right. This is why we're here. Captain K's Corner. It's skeshel.substack.com. Why the passage of the Make Elections Secure Act would stop stolen elections forever. While the world is distracted by Ukraine drama and federal agencies that avoid accountability, one of the greatest bills ever fielded in the U.S. House is begging you to pay attention to its contents. 2 days ago, I published your in-depth guide to MESA, Make Elections Secure Act, which outlines 5 key pillars proposed by Representative Pete Sessions, Texas District 17, in what is the finest piece of federal elections legislation ever sponsored. I urge you to read that piece before advancing further into this follow-on analysis of the inner workings of the bill itself, drafted by Will Huff and Conrad Reynolds. All right. Your wish is my command, Seth. Your in-depth guide to MESA, Make Elections Secure Act. Representative Pete Sessions has sponsored a bill in the U.S. House straight from the dreams of every election integrity patriot in America. Can it pass? And how effective would it hypothetically be? By Seth Keshel. This week, I've received significant interest in my opinion of the Make Elections Secure Act Mesa, sponsored in the U.S. House by GOP Representative Pete Sessions of Texas. In this overview, I will outline the pillars of Sessions' proposed legislation, provide input on each, and candidly give my view not only on the likelihood of it passing both chambers, but also in evaluating its utility as productive and actionable legislation with regard to the 50 states and Washington, D.C., which contribute the 538 electoral votes, 100 Senate seats, and 435 House seats that come up for grabs in federal elections. Here is the release from Sessions' office, dated March 4th, which I have shortened to include his commentary. Congressman Sessions lays legislative framework to bolster election integrity for immediate release, March 4th, 2025. Washington, D.C. Congressman Sessions today announced he is drafting landmark legislation entitled the Make Elections Secure Act, MESA, to align with President Trump's commitment to make elections secure again. This legislation will address vulnerabilities in voter security through 5 key pillars. 1, hand-marked and hand-counted paper ballots. MESA mandates the exclusive use of hand-marked paper ballots for all federal elections and primaries receiving public funds. This eliminates reliance on vulnerable electronic systems, ensuring a tamper-proof, human verifiable process that reflects voters' true intent. 2, voter ID and citizenship requirements. The bill requires every voter to present a government-issued photo ID, such as a driver's license, passport, or military ID, and sign an affidavit in the paper poll book affirming U.S. citizenship and single voting intent under penalty of felony charges. 3, shortened early voting. Early in-person voting is limited to 3 days prior to Election Day, the final Tuesday of voting, streamlining administration and concentrating resources for secure, manageable hand counts while maintaining voter access. 4, limited mailed ballots. Mailed ballots are restricted to active duty military personnel stationed away from their jurisdiction and voters with physician-certified medical conditions preventing in-person voting. 5, paper elections and small precincts. MESA mandates paper poll books as the primary voter check-in method and caps precinct sizes at 1,500 registered voters, returning elections to community-based transparent operations that facilitate efficient hand counting and local oversight. If all of this sounds familiar to you, as if you've read it here in the pages of Captain K's Corner, then you are right to be pleased that election integrity warriors are making a tremendous difference. While I cannot personally take credit for this legislation, to allies and outright election integrity champions I've worked with for more than 2 years are to be credited for writing the legislation and presenting it for Sessions' sponsorship. Those 2 gentlemen are Will Huff and Colonel Conrad Sessions, retired, a pair of Arkansas patriots helping steer the ship locally and nationally. These points are a dream listing straight out of my 10 Points to True Election Integrity, first published in 2022. Here is my evaluation of each of Sessions' 5 pillars of the MESA: hand-marked and hand-counted paper ballots. In what should be a common-sense reform for all, this is a major win for those who have spent years digging into every technical manual and patent form under the sun, like David Clements. Ban all electronic voting systems is listed second out of my 10 points. Second, only a full purge behind a full purge of fraudulent registrations and the requirement for continued maintenance of said databases. Some of you wonder why I go so hard on voter registration corruption and mail-in balloting instead of machines, and there are multiple reasons why I do this. First, I'm not a technical expert and can barely make a printer work. There are people who know a lot more about advanced technology and large cyber infrastructures, and I prefer not to create a massive cloud of confusion by stepping into their lanes. Second, I like to keep things simple and consider it my role to educate the layperson on the state of elections rather than trying to further convince people who already agree with me. Here is the key point, once again, about the machines. Voters are essentially voting on black box systems that require voters to trust that all components of the electronics election infrastructure are relaying and thereby tallying choices as intended by the voters. You must trust that the county elections office, rather than having a giant stack of paper ballots anyone can verify, has an electronically compiled vote total that is untainted by even a single fraudulent vote. Multiple studies by multiple experts have shown numerous vulnerabilities, backdoors, and ways to manipulate electronic voting in nefarious ways, and you don't even need to try to convince someone your Trump vote was switched to a Biden vote to make the case. It's all about transparency, and up until recently, it was the Democrats who made the exact case I just did. Clearly, this point needs some edification with how to handle a return to primitive elections, which is partly addressed in point 5, with enforcement of paper poll books for check-ins and smaller precincts, which I'll discuss shortly. Voter ID and citizenship requirements. Another no-brainer. But don't expect your Democrat neighbors to do anything but call these points racist, xenophobic, and literally Hitler. I'm not a believer that blue states are blue because they lack voter ID, registration and mail balloting are why many are blue. But they lack voter ID because their entire set of election laws is so disparately unfair and rigged that it would naturally lack something as simple as voter ID. Additionally, I don't think illegal aliens and non-citizens are voting in statistically significant numbers. I think in states that have automatic voter registration, they are being voted for. Regardless, this point is logical and will be a safeguard against voter fraud, which is different from election fraud when government or other entities conspire to manipulate elections on a large scale. The fact that this needs to be put into legislation should create a sense of astonishment among fence sitters as to how inherently corrupt blue states are. This fits my third of 10 points. Shortened early voting. When you stick your favorite dish into the oven, an essential part of the recipe is how much time is specified for how long your culinary masterpiece should stay in there. Likewise, delicately twisting election results in your favor, like the 2 Democrat U.S. House seats from California decided in December, requires the key but often forgotten ingredient of time. Combining extended voting periods, also known as time, as with as many mail-in ballots as possible as non-penalized ballot harvesting, creates what amounts to the equivalent of an adult Easter egg hunt. You have 6 weeks. Mail ballots went out today. Go hang out in the projects and in the densely populated downtown areas and use this data sheet as your harvesting guide. All 1,000 of you full-time activists reel in 100 ballots each, and we will net 100,000 more votes here in Philadelphia County than all trends indicators and predictors suggest should be possible. Early voting wasn't a widespread thing until the 1980s, when Texas authorized it for all with no excuse necessary. Now it has become sport, with 91% of the Lone Star State's vote in 2020 cast prior to Election Day. Sessions specifies 3 days of early voting in the run-up to Election Day. It is a little more lenient than I would like to see, but if there are exceptions on who is allowed to vote early, then I'm probably fine with it. My specifications for early voting, which to ban is my 5th of all 10 points, is for a select group of people such as doctors, nurses, pilots, truckers, or election workers to have limited access to in-person early voting so as not to disenfranchise them from voting, but not to allow a massive window for exploitation via the blue state model. Limited mail ballots. Hallelujah, church. Say yes and amen. Get off of your dead asses and go vote in person. Is it really that convenient to vote by mail twice every other year if you're a primary voter, or once every 4 years if you only vote in presidential elections? No, of course not. Go out into the big bad world to get your hair done, drive golf balls, shop for groceries, pick up or drop off kids at school, and venture to the workspace. You mean to tell me you can't go vote in person? Voting by mail, which was inflicted on this nation by Oregon in the 1990s, has been banned by most first world nations throughout the world because it is wide open to fraud. If you trust in mail elections, then please put $500 in a self-addressed stamped envelope and send it to yourself with a note on the envelope stating $500 cash inside. If you get it back, I'll send you 5% on your investment. What better way to skirt in-person ID requirements and drum up artificial turnout for garbage candidates than to make up a passive system of voting that relies on a party's ability to collect envelopes more than its ability to motivate voters to show up and elect its members themselves? This point, which fully satisfies my fourth of 10 points, captures exactly what I would want it to capture. Mailing in a ballot is a privilege reserved exclusively for overseas or internally deployed military members and those too infirm to show up and cast a vote in person, although I believe a person should be mentally fit enough to make their own ballot choices without assistance or persuasion. This alone would strip away much of what makes the blue wall blue. Harris won 6 of 8 states with universal mail-in voting in 2024, and Biden won 7 of 8 in 2020. Paper elections and small precincts. This fifth pillar, which satisfies my 6th of 10 points, is essential for making the entire proposal work. If we simply dump machines and mail-in voting and don't have a working solution as a foundation, then we will quickly see public uproar over an inefficient system that functions worse than the original, which is sold as convenient for reasons of critical states having the ability to corrupt elections on an as-needed basis. One key way mega counties such as Maricopa have corrupted elections is by herding over 2.5 million registered voters under voting centers and getting away from precinct voting, which is distinctly American in that it assembles communities to operate elections with little oversight and maximum engagement of their neighbors who happen to know people and can spot weird activity or people who don't belong there with greater ease. Liz Harris recommended 1,200 registered voters per precinct in her 2021 treatise on Maricopa's elections. Sessions proposes 1,500, which is also where Maricopa Recorder Justin Heap comes in for his recommendation. Either way, precincts of this size, rather than massive community voting centers and disguised central count tabulation centers that function as crime scenes, will allow for efficient and accurate processing of the precinct's voter roll and the subsequent tallying of ballots by hand, which will require standardized training across the nation to implement. Is Mesa missing anything? The most important thing to clean up regarding our elections is the corruption of state voter rolls. Voter rolls are the foundation of election manipulation, and nothing makes it more clear to me than the stats regarding automatic voter registration states versus non-automatic voter registration states from 2024. Trump won the non-automatic registration states 248 electoral votes to 5, with only New Hampshire 4 and Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District 1 going for Harris. This was even worse in 2020 when Biden carried automatic voter registration states, there were 4 fewer then, plus Washington, D.C., by a combined tally of 243 electoral votes to 9. Yes, 9. Conversely, North Dakota is the only state that lacks voter registration of any kind, and my model suggests it is the most impervious to election manipulation over the past 3 cycles on a trend line differing from its southern neighbor, South Dakota, which suffers under corruption of its voter registration database thanks to a lobbyist-owned Secretary of State and those exploiting RV parks for residency. Combining flooded voter rolls with expanded mail-in balloting and ballot harvesting is what keeps states blue. Look at Michigan for prime example, where 83% of the population was registered to vote in 2024, when only 77% of any state population is over the age of 18 and therefore eligible to vote. Not directly addressing the voter rolls requires all 5 pillars of Sessions' plan to be fully authorized and subsequently engaged for them to be effective in combating fraudulent elections. If we miss on the mail-in ballot pillar, then nothing will change in captured states like Washington, Oregon, and California, because the loose registrations credit line will remain intact. Voter rolls must be purged, or better yet, eliminated North Dakota style, to really move the needle. What will opposition look like? aside from brain-dead rhinos in Congress and all Democrats. Look for the blue states to raise holy hell and fling dust into the air over Mesa, and if passed by Congress, shop for judges to invalidate the act on 10th Amendment grounds. The 10th Amendment, although designed to maximize the freedom of the states where the Constitution provides no law, has been exploited by blue states, which have crafted their election laws to tip the scales in favor of Democrats and thereby nullify the votes of red states, which have much stricter laws pertaining to election administration and cleaner voter rolls to boot. Where I disagree with my friend and colleague Chris Jersky is with his position on the appropriateness of Mesa. Jersky says this is an issue that belongs to the state, and while I agree in principle, they are using their freedoms to disenfranchise the rest of the nation and must be reined in for the betterment of the country. Hence Sessions' specification that the bill covers federal elections only. There will be confusion if this bill passes as to how to operate an election, with federal and state election rules differing from one another. For example, how do you run an in-person election for president but have mail ballots flying all over the place for state elections? That means as this proposal moves forward, there will likely be scores of aides and legislators taking hacks at it, which may dilute the original bill. The verdict: I would not put high odds of Sessions' bill making it through Congress, though I expect it to be embraced by President Trump, which enhances the odds of passage. Currently, Republicans hold a 218 to 214 majority, or 220 to 215 as elected, after the death of Democrat Sylvester Turner and pending final cabinet confirmations. There are high odds that some dirtbag Republicans, especially from mail-in heavy states like Washington or California, will sandbag the effort, effectively killing it in the cradle. You can bet your bottom dollar the bill will be opposed by Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski in the Senate, but I still consider it worth the effort because this will get all members of Congress on the books for where they stand on a bill that is fundamentally the greatest piece of legislation regarding elections at the federal level ever produced. And there we go. Now, back to what Seth said about, here we go, Section 104. All right, so Seth is now going to go into detail on the actual piece that this is on today, which is also from skeshel.substack.com. And there we go. So I'm going to keep reading. Why would I bother to spend so much digital ink pouring through the minutiae and technical language found in the long-form bill? If you've been a watchman on the wall for any significant length of time, then you've certainly heard countless examples of poison pills or pork items being stuffed into 800-page bills written by lobbyists that senators and representatives voting on the bill can't or won't read. This overview also gives us a chance to pull the bill apart before politicos and bureaucrats get a hold of it and rip it in 100 different directions. You could read the PDF attachment of the draft bill attached within this post. As a reminder, here are the 5 key pillars. You can read my breakdown of each in the linked article above, and that's the one we just read. 1, hand-marked and hand-counted paper ballots. Mesa mandates the exclusive use of hand-marked paper ballots for all federal elections and primaries receiving public funds. This eliminates reliance on vulnerable electronic systems, ensuring a tamper-proof, human-verifiable process that reflects voters' true intent. Okay. 2, voter ID and citizenship requirements. The bill requires every voter to present a government issue ID, such as driver's license, passport, military ID, and sign an affidavit. We got that one. Okay, so these are all from the old thing. But the important thing here is that it's not violating the 10th Amendment because it's just making federal funds contingent upon these requirements. If those proposals sound incredible, then wait until you pull apart the inner workings of the bill. Here are the most eye-popping, impactful points. Section 104, purposes. Point 7. Provision allows for all election records to be furnished to the public, which should be possible if federal elections are run in a synchronized system. No more games with ballot images, cast vote records, or signatures. Hence, mail-in ballots will be few and far between. Point 9, establishment of the Trust, which is an acronym, Technical Review for United States Security and Technology Board, to replace the EAC, Election Assistance Commission, which currently oversees election standards, equipment, and certification. As noted further down the document in Section 202, Trust will certify vendors for paper ballot production in accordance with approved specifications and ensures all ballots are printed before the election. This ends the corrupt practice of large counties dragging on vote counting for days and altering ballot counts, potentially printing ballots, as needed to control outcomes. Section 203, hand counting procedures and reporting. Point 3C, precincts are required to relay hand-counted results, again, possible thanks to smaller precinct sizes, to state election officials no later than 4 hours after poll closure. Results may not be instantaneous, as it is in some locations after poll closure today, but there will still be no more weeks of counting in states that have no issues stealing races in broad daylight and candidates declaring victory next to a Santa Claus yard display. Point 5, requires live video streaming of the counting process in every precinct. Presumably, Trust will provide standards for video capture and a bidding war for election camera technologies, and printed ballots will commence. Section 207, early voting restrictions. A, the proposed 3 days of early voting are limited to the Saturday, Sunday, and Monday immediately before Election Day, which falls on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November in even-numbered years. This means, with the exceptions of an Election Day falling on November 2 or 3, elections will be entirely held in November. Currently, states like Washington, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota begin distribution of mail-in ballots in September of election years, effectively constituting election season and allowing for activities that are uncontrollable and impossible to supervise to occur in defiance of law. RIP, mail voting. Section 301, eligibility criteria. B, want to vote by mail? Be sure to include your military orders showing you stationed outside your precinct of residence or your physician's orders qualifying you to vote by mail. Not only is this simple, it removes the excuses of states like Arizona or California that they need to take up until Christmas to finalize the counts of elections when Germany can process 50 million ballots in a single day. Section 303, prohibition on unsolicited ballots. A, states can no longer mail ballots on blast to an entire voter roll. This ends universal mail voting, a practice found in 8 states: California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Vermont, and Washington. Section 304, return requirements. A, establishes a deadline for return of ballots, and that is before close of polls. No more of this postmark nonsense by activist courts looking to emphasize the Nevada model for late counts in densely populated counties, with only a sliver of the electorate authorized to vote by mail. This isn't going to be the fiasco it sounds like, unlike in a state like California today, which will count 15 million or more mail ballots in each election. Section 404, free voter ID provision. A, astutely anticipating grievance industry resistance and whining about residents of reservations, slums, or other locations containing people who can somehow buy alcohol, board a plane, rent a car, or sign up for OnlyFans. This section mandates free voter ID. This sidesteps the suppression narrative entirely. Section 406, compliance enforcement. B, states not complying with MESA and Trust board standards lose federal funding. Over $1 billion spent on federal elections since 2018, and subject themselves to a DOJ-run review of voter rolls. Hint, the voter rolls are every bit as corrupt as everything being dragged out by DOJ audits. Section 502, election data access and publication. B, owing to a synchronized system across all 50 states and Washington, D.C. The bill requires these 4 items for preservation and public access: precinct results, registration and turnout data, ballot images and cast vote records, chain of custody records. Look at it, you, Arizona. Title 6. Trust Board Establishment and Authority. Section 601. Creation and Composition. A. Establishment. The technical review for United States Security and Technology Trust Board is created with the National Institute of Science and Technology, NIST, as an independent entity. B. Members. 5 experts in election security and technology appointed by the NIST director shall serve 6-year staggered terms free of political ties. Section 602. Responsibilities and powers. A. Duties. The board shall 1. Set standards for voting systems, data, and administration. 2. Certify equipment and procedures. 3. Review state compliance biennially. B. Authority. The board may recommend funding cuts or decertification for noncompliance. Section 603. Independence and accountability. A. Autonomy. The board operates independently, reporting to NIST and Congress. B. Openness. All meetings and decisions shall be public, with records available within 30 days. Section 701. Repeal of HAVA. Gone. HAVA, Help America Vote Act 2002, brought you widespread electronic voting systems, corrupted state voter registration databases, and other modern maladies that enable election maladministration and foster overall distrust in this critical process. Relation to the 8 cardinal sins of elections, which are automatic voter registration, ballot harvesting, excessive mail-in voting, prolonged counting, ranked choice voting, same-day voter registration, unique corruption, no voter ID. Automatic voter registration, effectively neutered if and only if all pillars of MESA are adhered to, particularly mail-in balloting and ballot harvesting. I would prefer to see language banning voter registration or putting it back to factory settings with automatic registration banned and all voters required to re-register. After all, we re-register our cars every year. Ballot harvesting, neutralized with the absence of mail-in ballots. Excessive mail-in voting, no longer a threat, with limited categories of eligible male voters and the dismantling of universal mail voting. Prolonged counting, fully addressed by requirement of precincts to submit tallies to state authorities within 4 hours of poll closure. Must hammer this down for state boards as well. Ranked choice voting, not addressed, but presumably no longer legal if all 50 states operate federal elections under the same set of rules. Goodbye, Lisa Murkowski. Same-day voter registration, no longer authorized, with deadlines to finalize voter rolls hitting 30 days before Election Day. Sorry, Wisconsin. Unique corruption. Special court decisions in Nevada allowing 2 counties contributing over 87% of the vote are sidestepped with a national law. The Wisconsin Election Commission can no longer make its own rules for every big election. You get the drift here. Putting everyone under one set of rules for federal elections takes away a lot of the home field advantages put in place by those seeking to defraud the public. No voter ID. This topic, which has more than 70% support nationally, effectively dies when we tell the public we will dish IDs out for free for those who supposedly can't get one. Conclusion. Easily the strongest piece of legislation governing modern elections ever to appear at the U.S. Capitol, and in fact, one that purges the books of the awful, outdated, and corrupted HAVA legislation. Representative Sessions' bill should receive a lot more attention than it is currently getting, and even if it can't pass with such a small Republican majority, must be presented so the people can know who is on board with fair elections and who is owned by the outside interests seeking to preserve a rotten, corrupted system. Call your federal representatives today and demand they get behind this bill, which we will monitor to completion to ensure structural integrity. You can download the bill straight from skeshel.substack.com from this article. I'm going to talk to Seth and see if we can do a live stream, him and me, talking about all this, how it can be made possible. In my opinion, the big problem with constitutionality is sidestepped completely by saying, hey, you don't follow these rules, you don't get the big federal money. That takes care of the states' rights issue right there. It's good enough for me. So I don't think that you don't have to say, well, I know that in a perfect world, the states get to do their own elections. It's specified in the Constitution. Okay, good for you. You can do them however you want. Just don't expect federal money. That's fine. I think that works just great. That's how they get around everything else. And, if we can use that loophole to get our elections no longer fraudulent, that is absolutely amazing. All right. That is our show for today. Shorter show, I know. Check out readingepicthreads.substack.com where I will be where I always live stream Reading Epic Threads. And I'm doing a little thing before that where I'm recording a chapter of The Little Prince in French. It's not the best. My French needs a little work, but it's just a little thing I'm doing by myself, for myself, and it's fun. So, there's that. But anyway, thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget to go to tulipblooms.shop and get the amazing castor blend, get the amazing rainfall, and also body butter, guys. Body butter will stop shipping. Okay? Just remember that. It's going to stop shipping in April. It's not because I'm being mean. It's because the stuff melts in the summer. And if it melts, there's only one way to fix it, and it's a process. You have to put it in the oven. You have to turn it to a completely liquid. Then you have to rush it over to the freezer. And then once it gets to a certain consistency, you have to whip it. Long story short, I want it to stay in this state. And the only way to do that during the summer is to say, hey, come buy it from me directly at the Tulip Blooms World Headquarters. So get your hands on your body butter right now. We're making it by the freaking truckload. But once the weather gets too hot, we're gonna go on a pause, probably until late September. So just don't forget that. And that's how that works. So tulipblooms.shop. Don't forget the .shop. Promo code Shapiro. Let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.